They expected entertainment when Vaughn Heston called Zaire Freeman to the stage. The billionaire patron's smile gleamed under crystal chandeliers as donors adjusted their seats, phones already angled for what promised to be the evening's viral moment. A 13-year-old black boy in borrowed clothes, summoned like a street performer, while Bel Air's elite sipped champagne and whispered about opportunity and diversity. The Heston Academy of Music's winter gala had everything. Tailored suits that cost more than Zaire's annual grocery budget. Faculty smiles stretched tight as drumskins. Student musicians who'd never touched a subway rail. Vaughn owned the room without raising his voice. His donations had built the East Wing, funded 3 faculty positions, commissioned the Academy's signature composition that played at every major event. A staff member guided Zaire forward. Not roughly, but firmly, the way you position furniture. His clothes were clean. His late mother Martha had taught him that much. But the blazer hung slightly loose, the pants hemmed by hand, the shoes scuffed despite his best efforts. He was the wrong kind of guest. Everyone knew it. The Academy's president, Dr. Whitmore, shifted uncomfortably in his seat, but said nothing. Vaughn Heston's quarterly donations kept the lights on. "We're celebrating talent tonight," Vaughn said, his tone warm enough to fool cameras, but cold enough to cut. "And I hear you have a gift." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Soft at first, cultured, the kind that pretends it isn't cruel. Vaughn Heston's quarterly donations kept the lights on. No one would intervene. Zaire stood perfectly still. His fingers twitched slightly, an old habit, playing keys that weren't there. He didn't look at the audience. He looked at the violin someone had placed on the piano behind Vaughn, its varnish catching the light like honey. "Go on," Vaughn continued. "Show us what you've got." No pressure. The room held its collective breath. This was the moment they'd share later. "Remember that kid Heston embarrassed at the gala?" Zaire stepped forward. He didn't argue, didn't plead, didn't shrink dash. He lifted the violin like it weighed nothing, tucked it under his chin with the ease of someone who'd done this 10,000 times in darkness, and drew the bow across the strings. One phrase. Clean. Controlled. Haunting. The laughter died mid-breath. The melody built, borrowed from Bach's Chaconne but transformed, woven through with something bluesy and aching that Bach never wrote. Notes layered like architecture. Zaire's eyes closed. His body swayed slightly, not theatrically, but the way a tree moves with wind. The way his mother had moved when she played, that unconscious surrender to music that can't be taught. Someone's glass paused halfway to their lips. A donor's phone dipped. Even the servers along the walls stopped moving. Trays held motionless. Vaughn's expression shifted, not fear exactly, not respect, but recognition. Like he was hearing something he thought was buried, something that shouldn't exist anymore. The music filled the ballroom. Not loud, but complete, the way water fills a glass. 3 minutes of absolute control. Technical precision that made the Academy's first-chair violinists look like beginners. Emotional depth that shouldn't exist in someone who'd lived only 13 years but somehow did, pulled from grief and discipline and his mother's ghost speaking through his hands. When Zaire finished, the silence stretched for 3 full seconds. Then applause erupted. Real applause. Shouts. A standing ovation that started in the back and rolled forward like a wave. 3 minutes later, nobody remembered who owned the room. Comment your city. Have you ever been underestimated? But to understand how Zaire Freeman ended up on that stage, you need to understand Martha. Zaire wasn't enrolled at the Heston Academy of Music. He was an outsider drawn by sounds leaking through practice room windows. Music was the only place he felt whole. His invitation to the gala wasn't really an invitation. It was Vaughn Heston's idea of entertainment, a feel-good moment, after word spread that some kid from the wrong side of Wilshire had shocked everyone. What Vaughn didn't know was that Zaire Freeman wasn't a party trick. He was a disciplined genius built through his mother's training. Martha Freeman had raised him on structure, patience, and truth. She'd taught him that music wasn't luxury, it was language. Martha had died 3 years ago. Stroke. Sudden. One morning she was teaching Zaire how to shift positions smoothly. The next she was gone. Zaire kept her notebook and practiced on whatever he could find. A broken keyboard missing half its keys. He taught himself violin by watching YouTube videos on library computers, then Air practicing the movements until they became muscle memory. The performance was already spreading online. Phones had captured everything. But viral attention was fragile. And in Vaughn Heston's world, attention was something he controlled. As servers began clearing plates, Vaughn leaned close to Zaire. His cologne was expensive. His smile was razor-thin. "Enjoy tonight," he said, voice low enough to be private, loud enough to be heard. "It's the last time you'll feel welcome." Zaire's apartment building sat in mid-city, 40 minutes by bus from Bel Air, but might as well have been a different planet. The elevator hadn't worked in 8 months. Cooking smells layered the hallway. Curry, fried fish, something sweet and burnt. Apartment 3F. 2 bedrooms. Rent controlled, but still eating 70% of his grandmother's disability check. Everything was organized with military precision. His grandmother Nadia insisted on that. "We may be poor," she'd say, "but poor doesn't mean dirty. Pride costs nothing." Everywhere, subtle reminders of Martha. A metronome on the bookshelf. Sheet music tucked between cookbooks. A recording of Hilary Hahn that Zaire knew by heart because his mother had played it every Sunday morning while making breakfast. Zaire kept a sealed box of Martha's papers in his closet. Not because he'd forgotten her, because opening it felt like pressing on a bruise. He moved to his practice space, a corner where he'd set up a broken keyboard on a folding table. 7 keys didn't function. The volume dial was stuck at maximum. One speaker crackled, but it was his. A melody had been following him all week. 4 to 6 notes, simple but persistent, like something half-remembered from a dream. He hummed it softly, a descending phrase that resolved unexpectedly, almost questioning. It felt important somehow. Familiar. After dinner, Zaire saw his phone had notifications. Text from a number he didn't recognize. "That was incredible tonight. I'm Leora. I was at the gala with my parents. My mom teaches at the academy. Would you want to try a real violin sometime?" Students at the Heston Academy didn't text kids from mid-city. They didn't offer instruments that cost more than Zaire's rent. He didn't respond. Instead, he did something he'd been avoiding for weeks. He opened his closet and pulled out Martha's box. Inside, handwritten staff paper, old recordings on CDs, photographs, letters. He'd been through it once, right after she died, then sealed it because the grief was too fresh. The weight of her absence too heavy to bear daily. At the bottom, Zaire found a recording labeled in Martha's careful script, "Theme Sketches, 2014. He found the ancient CD player his grandmother kept in a kitchen drawer. You never know when you'll need it. Plugged it in with hands that shook slightly, inserted the disc. Static. Then his mother's voice, so familiar it stopped his breath. Recording date, March 15th, 2014. Working title, Resonance. Still needs bridge work. That slight laugh she'd get when she was excited about an idea. That particular inflection on the word resonance, that meant she thought she'd found something special. Then music. Piano. His mother playing. The melody hit Zaire like electricity. That same phrase he'd been humming all week. But fuller, richer, part of a complete theme. Martha's playing was confident, exploratory, building the melody through variations and development. He could hear her breathing in the pauses between phrases. Could imagine her at the piano, probably late at night when he was asleep, working out ideas in the darkness. He knew this music, but not from Martha's recordings. He'd heard it at the gala. The Academy's signature composition that played during the opening ceremony, the piece Vaughn Heston always commissioned for major events. The one credited to Malcolm Ashford, prestigious British composer, multiple awards, faculty position at a London conservatory. But this was Martha's recording. From 2014, years before the Academy's signature piece premiered in 2016. Zaire listened again. The progression was identical. The harmonic choices, unusual, distinctive, were the same. This wasn't similarity. This was theft. Someone had stolen his mother's music and built a reputation on it. Outside his window, sirens wailed. The city's nighttime symphony. Zaire sat in the dark, Martha's recording playing on repeat, and began to understand that tonight's performance wasn't the end of anything. It was the beginning. The Heston Academy of Music occupied a converted mansion in Bel Air, all marble columns and imported wood. Zaire spent his afternoons on the Academy's perimeter, sitting on public benches near the practice rooms where sound leaked through expensive windows. Today he sat under a jacaranda tree. Purple flowers carpeted the sidewalk, crushed petals releasing their strange honey smell. "You know you're allowed to come inside." He opened his eyes. A girl stood 3 feet away, violin case in one hand. South Asian features, expensive clothes that looked comfortable rather than showy. "Leora." From the texts. "I don't think I am," Zaire said. "Technically the courtyard's public access until 6 p.m. She smiled. "Want to come inside? I have a practice room reserved. You could try a real violin." Zaire looked at the building. Security cameras at every entrance. A bronze plaque, funded by the generous support of Vaughn Heston. "Bad idea," he said. "Vaughn Heston's a donor, not a principal, and he's kind of a dick." The assessment was so unexpected and so accurate that Zaire almost smiled. "Just for a minute," he agreed. Inside, the building smelled like wood polish and money. The practice room was small, soundproofed. Leora opened her case. Inside, a violin that probably cost more than Zaire's life. "It's a loan from the academy," she said. "Go ahead. Play something." The wood was alive under his hands, resonant, warm, perfectly balanced. He drew the bow across the strings. The sound hit him like music finally completing itself. Full, rich, pure resonance. He played that melody from Martha's recording, adapted for violin, transformed through his fingers into something that existed between classical and jazz. Leora stood very still, barely breathing. When he stopped, she was staring at him. "Holy shit," she whispered. "Language," said a voice from the doorway. Mrs. Hartford stood there, older white woman, cardigan, clipboard. "Students aren't permitted to loan academy instruments to non-students. I think it's time for you to leave, Mr. Freeman." Zaire walked past her without looking. Down the hallway, out through the side door that locked behind him with a definitive click. He'd been inside the Heston Academy of Music for exactly 7 minutes. 7 minutes that would change everything. What Zaire didn't know was that someone had filmed the whole thing. The video was already uploading to TikTok. "Random kid in our practice room sounds better than our whole orchestra." By the time Zaire got home, 2,000 views and climbing. And in his Bel Air office, Vaughn Heston watched the video 3 times with an expression that would have made Zaire's blood run cold. "Find out everything about this kid," he told his assistant. "Everything. Would you lend your violin to a stranger?" Vaughn Heston threw excellent parties. Tonight's winter benefit served 3 purposes: celebrate the Academy's expansion, announce next year's commissioned works, and remind everyone whose generosity made art possible. The ballroom glittered. Ice sculptures shaped like violins. Servers with champagne. Students providing ambient music. Vaughn worked the room like a politician, making everyone feel seen. Then Dr. Whitmore whispered, "Should we do the Freeman thing now?" Vaughn set down his wine glass. "Let's make it interesting." He stood, moving to the microphone. The room quieted immediately. "Friends," he began, "we're here to celebrate artistic excellence. And I think it's important we remember that excellence comes from unexpected places." He gestured toward Zaire, wearing the same borrowed blazer, looking like he wanted to disappear. "This young man recently demonstrated some interesting talent. I thought tonight would be perfect to share that with all of you." Zaire felt every eye in the room turn toward him. 300 people, donors in designer clothes, students who'd spent years training. Vaughn met him at the stage. "Just play something. Show these good people what you've got. No pressure." The subtext was clear: perform for us. Entertain us. Prove you belong, or prove you don't. Someone had placed a concert-quality violin on the piano. Zaire climbed onto the stage. Spotlights hit him like physical pressure. Soft laughter started somewhere in the middle tables. Vaughn sat down, satisfied. The kid would freeze or fumble. Problem solved. Zaire closed his eyes, found the silence underneath the noise. Remembered Martha's words: "The stage doesn't forgive mistakes, but it also doesn't forget excellence." And began to play. The first note was a question, single, pure, hanging in the air like frost. A note that demanded attention, that cut through the murmurs and the expectations and the soft cruelty of their laughter. The laughter died. The second note answered, lower, richer, building a foundation. Then Zaire stopped playing covers, stopped borrowing, started speaking. The melody that emerged was his own. that theme from Martha's recording, transformed for violin, woven through with technical passages that made the students in the room sit up straighter. Harmonics that rang like bells. Double stops that shouldn't be possible for someone his age. Passages that required absolute control and perfect intonation, executed with the kind of precision that only comes from thousands of hours of practice in the dark. But technique wasn't the point. The point was the sound, aching and furious and heartbroken and triumphant all at once. Every note told a story. Poverty that pretends it isn't shameful. Talent that shouldn't have to apologize. Grief transformed into something too beautiful to ignore. His mother's voice channeled through his hands. Her legacy made audible. The room forgot to breathe. Vaughn's smile faded. Recognition tinged with something that looked almost like fear. He'd heard this music before. The harmonic progression. The emotional architecture. Too familiar to be coincidence. When Zaire finished, the ballroom was standing. Applause crashed over him like weather. Shouts. A woman in the third row openly crying. Vaughn stood because everyone was standing. But his face had gone carefully blank. Phones everywhere, capturing everything. The performance was going viral in real time. Leora appeared at Zaire's elbow. I told you you were good. Where's the exit? Zaire asked quietly. Outside. He tried to remember how to breathe normally. That was incredible, Leora said. It was a mistake. Because you can't unsee me now. None of them can. And that's dangerous. Backstage, Stephanie Ross stood watching, chair of the Donor Advisory Committee. She'd been recording everything, mind already working through implications. And Vaughn was making a call. I need you to pull the Freeman file. Everything. Family history, school records, financials. And I need it tonight. What are you looking for? Leverage. If that boy thinks he can walk into my academy and make me look like a fool, he has another thing coming. Don't blink. The next move gets darker. The video hit 2 million views by morning. His grandmother showed him the Los Angeles Times. Unknown prodigy stuns Heston gala. Zaire's stomach tightened. Martha had taught him about visibility, how it could protect you or destroy you. At school, students who normally ignored him suddenly knew his name. By Wednesday, an email arrived from Heston Academy offering full scholarship. Zaire deleted it, then deleted the follow-up, then declined Dr. Whitmore's phone call. I'm not interested, he said. The call ended with ice in Dr. Whitmore's voice. What Zaire didn't see was the email to Vaughn, or Vaughn's reply. Let it go. But there was a second email to Stephanie Ross. We need to talk. Tonight. Monday brought Leora to his school. Something weird is happening at the academy. They're creating new rules. Ways to keep people out who they don't think belong. People like me. Yeah. My mom said there's pressure from donors to be more selective. Vaughn Heston doesn't want you there. That evening, Zaire opened Martha's box again. Near the bottom, a newspaper clipping from 16 years ago. Heston Academy announces new signature composition. Composer, Malcolm Ashford. Zaire pulled out Martha's recording. Listened to her theme. Then found the Academy's signature piece online. Side by side. Track by track. Identical. Someone had taken Martha's work, credited it to someone else, and built Vaughn Heston's reputation on it. This wasn't just about him. This was about Martha. About theft. About who gets credit and who gets erased. His phone buzzed. This is Stephanie Ross. I chair the Academy's donor committee. We should talk. I think you deserve to know some things about your mother. Bring your mother's recordings. All of them. Stephanie Ross lived in Silver Lake in a mid-century modern house full of music. Framed concert programs. A Steinway grand piano. Shelves packed with scores. Zaire stood on her doorstep holding Martha's box. Come in, Stephanie said. No pretense. Just directness. She sat across from him, studying him with intensity. You brought the recordings. What have you figured out? Someone stole her music. The Academy's signature composition, it's hers. From 2014. Malcolm Ashford. Stephanie leaned forward. Your mother was brilliant. I met her once. 15 years ago. She came to the Academy with a portfolio. Clean, professional, undeniable. Zaire's chest tightened. He'd never heard this story. Vaughn Heston was on the review committee. Your mother's work was too good. It made other composers look ordinary. And Vaughn had just committed funding to Ashford's residency. Stephanie's voice was flat. He took her portfolio, said he wanted to study it further. He never returned it. Your mother followed up for months. Eventually, security escorted her out. And then Ashford premiered the piece. 18 months later, everyone called it genius. Vaughn commissioned recordings, built the Academy's brand around it. Zaire spread Martha's papers on the coffee table. Recordings, handwritten scores, the newspaper clipping. "This is proof," he said. Stephania picked up a score sheet. "Yes, this is proof. But they'll bury it. Vaughn Heston funds half the Academy's budget. Then we go public. You're 13. He's a billionaire with lawyers. He'll claim your mother signed release forms." Stephania stood, walked to the piano. "We need leverage. The Academy's spring showcase is in 6 weeks. Every major donor will be there. We create a situation where the truth comes out publicly, where the evidence is so clear that denying it becomes more embarrassing than admitting it. We perform my mother's original work. At the showcase. With her scores projected. Exactly. Make it undeniable. Make Vaughn choose between admitting theft or punishing a dead woman's child." It was brilliant. And terrifying. "What do I need to do?" Zaire asked. "Practice. Document everything. I'll work on building a coalition, getting board members on our side without Vaughn knowing. We need to find out if Ashford stole anything else. Go through every composition. If there's more theft, we have a pattern." Stephania walked him to the door. "Your mother was brave. And stubborn. And talented enough to make powerful people nervous. You're exactly like her. Which is why we might actually pull this off." That night, Zaire made lists. Martha's compositions by date. Ashford's works by premiere date. 3 hours later, 6 possible matches. His phone buzzed. "Leora, my mom says yes. Practice room tomorrow." Then Stephania found 2 board members willing to listen. "Keep your head down." Zaire looked at Martha's photo. "I'm going to fix this. I'm going to make them say your name. What would you risk to protect someone's legacy?" The meeting request arrived through official channels. Dr. Whitmore's assistant calling Nadia's phone, professional and polite. "Mr. Heston would like to meet with Zaire to discuss future opportunities. Tomorrow at 4 p.m. at the Academy. We'll send a car." Nadia had looked at Zaire with concern. "You don't have to go." "I know," he'd said. But they both knew he'd go anyway. Because you don't ignore summons from billionaires, even when you're planning to destroy them. The black Mercedes was silent luxury. Leather seats. Tinted windows. The driver wore gloves and said nothing during the 40-minute drive to Bel Air. Zaire watched the neighborhoods change, from Mid-City's density to West LA's sprawl to Bel Air's ridiculous wealth. Gates. Hedges. Driveways longer than his street. The Academy looked different without crowds. Inside, Vaughn's office was absurd. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the grounds. Original art on the walls. Zaire recognized a Basquiat, a Rothko, something that might have been a Picasso sketch. Furniture that looked like museum pieces. A desk the size of Zaire's bedroom. Vaughn stood by the windows. "Thank you for coming. I wanted to talk about your future. About opportunities. I'm not interested in the Academy. I know. But this is about acknowledging that I may have misjudged you." Vaughn pulled out a folder. "Legal documents. I've had my attorneys draft a comprehensive support package. Full scholarship. Living stipend. Everything you'd need. In exchange for what? Nothing. Just standard confidentiality about Academy operations." There it was. Zaire stepped closer, looked at the papers. Certain phrases jumped out. Agrees to refrain from public statements. Waives claims regarding intellectual property. Vaughn knew. "How much?" Zaire asked. $150,000 over 4 years. Plus instruction worth another $50,000 annually. It was life-changing money. Everything Martha would have wanted for him. All it cost was his voice. "And if I say no?" Vaughn's eyes shifted. "Then you continue your current path. Limited resources. Though I should mention we've become aware of concerning behavior. Trespassing. Using student resources without authorization. Making claims that could be construed as defamatory." The threat was clear. Accept the money and silence, or face legal action. "Those recordings belong to my mother," Zaire said quietly. "The compositions are hers. She registered them with the Library of Congress." Vaughn's micro-expression betrayed him. Surprise, quickly controlled. "I'm sure there's been confusion. But that's exactly the kind of claim that becomes problematic without proper legal counsel. Which you can't afford. Sign this agreement. We avoid all that unpleasantness." Zaire thought about Martha. how she'd worked doubles, given up her career, died without ever hearing her music performed as hers. "No," he said. "No, I'm not signing. I'm not taking your money. And I'm not staying quiet about what you did to my mother." Vaughn's smile faded. "You're making a serious mistake. I've been generous. If you pursue this, I will destroy you. So do it." Vaughn picked up his phone. "Send them in." The door opened. Mrs. Hartford and 2 security guards. "Mr. Freeman has been trespassing and making unfounded accusations. I want it documented. He's barred from campus effective immediately. If you're found on Academy property again, you'll be arrested. If you make public statements we deem defamatory, we'll pursue legal action. Do you understand?" "I understand. Tell your new friend Stephania Ross she should be careful. Committee positions are appointed, not guaranteed." Security escorted Zaire out. That evening, he told Nadia everything. "Your mother went through something like this," she said. "People with power telling her to be quiet. She chose you. She chose safety over fighting battles she couldn't win. And part of her died when she stopped making music." "I'm not stopping," Zaire said. "I know. Your mother would be proud." His phone buzzed. "Stephania, I heard. You okay?" He typed, "Yeah." He showed his hand. Then Leora, "My mom found something in the Library of Congress database. Your mother did register her work. We have proof. Official, government-stamped, undeniable proof." Zaire felt determination settle in his chest. He pulled out his notebook and began writing everything down. Documentation for what was coming. The showcase was in 5 weeks. Would you choose justice over security? Drop a fire if yes. The Heston Academy Spring Showcase happened every year like clockwork. Wealthy donors, students in formal blacks and whites, a program carefully curated to demonstrate excellence. Vaughn stood backstage watching the setup. Everything was proceeding according to plan. Security doubled. Press managed. The program would end with the Academy's signature piece conducted by Vaughn himself. A triumph. What he didn't know was that in the third-floor practice room, Zaire was warming up while Stephania reviewed the presentation one last time. "You're sure about this?" Leora asked, checking her laptop's connection to the auditorium's projector. "No," Zaire admitted. "But we're doing it anyway." Dr. Cade, Leora's mother, stood by the door keeping watch. She'd gotten Zaire into the building through a maintenance entrance, convinced the student coordinator that the last-minute addition was approved. It was a lie, but by the time anyone checked, it would be too late. "Remember," Stephania said, "you perform your mother's original composition exactly as she wrote it. I present the evidence. Everything documented. Then we step back and let the truth work." They moved through empty hallways. The intermission feature ended to polite applause. The house lights dimmed. Then Dr. Cade stepped out from the wings. "Excuse me. We have a late addition to tonight's program. A special performance honoring a composer whose work deserves recognition." Confused murmurs rippled through the audience. Backstage, Vaughn turned with alarm. "Please welcome Zaire Freeman performing Resonance by Martha Freeman, composed in 2014. Zaire walked on stage. The spotlights hit him like physical pressure. 600 faces watching. Phones already rising, some to record, some because they recognized him from the viral video. Confusion spreading like ripples in water. In the third row, Stephania sat with her laptop open, finger hovering over the enter key. In the 10th row, a Los Angeles Times critic leaned forward, sensing something unexpected. And backstage, Vaughn Heston moved toward the stage entrance with murder in his eyes. Zaire lifted the violin, found the silence underneath the noise, remembered everything Martha had taught him, and began to play. The first phrase was Martha's question, the one she'd asked in 2014 when she believed the world might listen, when she'd still had hope that talent and hard work would be enough. The melody unfolded exactly as she'd written it, note perfect, emotionally raw. Zaire played not as himself, but as an extension of his mother's voice, speaking across time and death and theft. Every phrase a testimony, every note an accusation. 30 seconds in, Stephania pressed enter. The projector screen behind Zaire illuminated. Martha's handwritten score appeared, her notation clear and precise, dated March 2014 in the corner. Her name written carefully across the top. Martha Freeman, Resonance, original theme. Murmurs grew louder. People pulled out phones, Googling, connecting dots. Vaughn reached the stage entrance. Mrs. Hartford intercepted him, whispered urgently. His face went pale. Zaire continued playing. On the screen, Stephanie cycled through evidence. The Library of Congress copyright registration. Photographs of Martha's manuscripts. Waveform analysis comparing Martha's 2014 recording to the Academy's 2016 premiere. The data was irrefutable. The auditorium erupted. Arguments. Shock. People standing. Board members pulling out phones. Zaire played through it all. The climax of the piece. Bittersweet acceptance. Beauty created anyway because that's what artists do. His bow moved with perfect control. The final phrase hung in the air, then faded. The auditorium exploded. Half standing and applauding. Half shouting questions. Board members rushing toward Vaughn. Stephanie stepped onto the stage with a microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, what you just witnessed was the original composition Resonance by Martha Freeman, registered March 15, 2014. 2 years before the Heston Academy premiered what they called their signature composition by Malcolm Ashford. She pulled up one final image. Martha's manuscript and Ashford's published score side by side. The similarities highlighted. Dozens of measures. Undeniably copied. This isn't inspiration. This is theft. And Martha Freeman deserves her name on the work she created. Before the Academy's legal counsel could reach her, Dr. Whitmore stepped on stage. Took the microphone with shaking hands. I think we need to investigate these claims. Thoroughly. Immediately. There's nothing to investigate, Vaughn shouted. This is a publicity stunt. The copyright registration is public record, Stephanie shot back. A board member stood, Eleanor Marsh, fierce reputation. Vaughn, did you know about this? Of course not. Did you review Martha Freeman's portfolio in 2014? I review hundreds of portfolios. Leora appeared with a tablet. I have emails. Correspondence between Mr. Heston and Malcolm Ashford from 2014. Discussing the Freeman material and how to incorporate it without attribution. Absolute silence. Your Academy email account, Leora said simply. Faculty have access to archived emails. My mother helped me find them. Eleanor Marsh stood. Vaughn Heston, as chair of this board, I'm calling an emergency meeting. You're not invited. Unless you want this to get uglier, I suggest you leave. Now. Security moved to escort him. Vaughn straightened his jacket and walked toward the exit with what dignity he could muster. At the door, he turned. Looked at Zaire. Pure hatred. You have no idea what you've started, Vaughn said. Yes, I do. Justice. Overdue. The door closed. This is how David beats Goliath. Share this. Eleanor took the microphone. The showcase is concluded. We ask for your patience while we address these allegations. The Academy will issue a statement within 48 hours. But the damage, the justice, was already done. Phones had captured everything. The live stream had reached 50,000 viewers. By morning, the story would be everywhere. Backstage, Zaire collapsed into a chair. Adrenaline drain. Stephanie sat beside him. You did it. We did it. Dr. Cade hugged him tightly. Your mother would be so proud. The words broke something in him. Zaire cried properly then. 3 years of grief and anger releasing. Outside, reporters were gathering. Questions shouted. The machinery of consequence grinding. What happens now? Zaire asked. Now the lawyers fight. The board investigates. Malcolm Ashford's career implodes. And you practice. Because after tonight, everyone's going to want to hear you play. They smuggled him out through maintenance tunnels. Stephanie drove him home. The drive was quiet. Streetlights flickered past. Zaire watched the neighborhoods reverse, wealth to sprawl to density. He was returning victorious. 48 hours later, the Academy released its statement. We're investigating. It wasn't enough. By day 3, Malcolm Ashford resigned. By day 4, his publishers suspended distribution. By day 5, 3 other composers came forward with similar stories. The pattern was undeniable. Systemic theft. The board forced Vaughn's resignation on day 6. His reputation, built over 30 years, collapsed in a week. And Martha Freeman's name began appearing where it belonged. 2 weeks after the showcase, the Library of Congress confirmed Martha's copyright registration. The Academy commissioned a full orchestral recording with Martha Freeman listed as sole composer. Zaire sat in Stephanie's living room watching it unfold. Colburn School is offering full tuition, Stephanie said. Thornton wants to discuss early admission. The New York Philharmonic's youth program called. That's good, Zaire said numbly. That's incredible. These are opportunities most musicians would kill for. His phone buzzed. Nadia, turn on Channel 7. A reporter stood outside the academy interviewing Eleanor Marsh. The board has voted to establish the Martha Freeman Composition Prize, an annual award for emerging composers, with full funding. It's the least we can do. The reporter asked about Vaughn. Eleanor's expression hardened. Mr. Heston's actions caused immeasurable harm. We're implementing new protocols, strengthening attribution requirements, creating independent oversight. And what about Zaire Freeman? Zaire showed remarkable courage. He's been offered admission with full scholarship. But more than that, he reminded us why we exist, to serve music and musicians, not donors and egos. Donors and egos. Zaire's phone exploded with messages. Well, Stephanie asked, are you? I don't know. Part of me wants nothing to do with that place. And now it's where her name will be honored annually. You could help shape that. Or choose somewhere else. Don't let what Vaughn did define your choices. You've already taken back the power. Zaire thought about Martha. I want to play. Not because of scholarships. Just play. Because the music needs to exist. Then that's what you'll do. 3 months later, Zaire stood in the Museum of Contemporary Art. The LA Philharmonic was recording Martha's complete works. They'd invited Zaire to the session. The orchestra was working through resonance with reverence. In the third measure, the first violin hesitated. The marking here says tender but urgent. How do we balance that? The conductor looked at Zaire. Any thoughts? You knew the composer. Zaire stood, walked to the stage. The conductor handed him a violin. Like this, Zaire said, and played the phrase. Tender but urgent. Love that knows it's running out of time. The orchestra tried again. Got it exactly right. After the session, the conductor asked, have you thought about studying orchestration? I'm starting at the academy in the fall. They named the composition building after my mom. You're going back there? It's different now. They hired Dr. Cade as department chair. So yeah, I'm going back. Not because the academy had redeemed itself entirely, but because Martha's name was carved in stone where students would see it every day. Because her prize would fund young composers. Because Zaire could help make sure what happened to her never happened to anyone else. That evening, Zaire stood in his room looking at the acceptance letter from the academy. Full scholarship, private instruction, access to world-class instruments and facilities. Everything Vaughn had offered with strings attached, now offered freely because Zaire had proven he deserved it on his own terms. Not because of charity, not because of pity, because of undeniable talent and courage that couldn't be ignored or silenced. His broken keyboard still sat in the corner. A reminder of where he'd started. 7 keys not working, speaker crackling, but music possible anyway. He wouldn't throw it away. Some things are worth keeping. Martha's box sat on his desk. Her photo remained. Young, smiling, confident. The person she'd been before the world took pieces of her. Before Vaughn Heston stole her work and her future. We did it, Mom, Zaire whispered. Your name's everywhere now. People know what you created. They know you mattered. Outside, the city's symphony continued. But now, woven through it. Martha Freeman's compositions playing on classical radio. Her music taught in conservatories. Her legacy ensuring other artists would be heard and protected. Zaire picked up his violin. No longer borrowed, but truly his. A gift with a plaque reading, in honor of Martha Freeman's courage and brilliance. He tucked it under his chin and began to play. Not performing. Not proving. Just creating. The way his mother had taught him. Because music survives everything. Theft, death, time, injustice. It survives because people like Martha create it anyway. Because people like Zaire carry it forward. Because truth, when given voice, cannot be unheard. Tomorrow, students would arrive at the Martha Freeman Composition Building and see her name above the door. They'd compete for her prize. Study her works. Learn that talent without opportunity means nothing. But talent plus courage plus community can change everything. Vaughn Heston would spend years in litigation, his fortune diminished, his reputation destroyed. But for Zaire, standing in his mid-city apartment with his mother's violin and her legacy restored, justice felt simpler. It sounded like music. It felt like doors opening. It looked like possibility. He played until his grandmother called for dinner. Then he set down the violin carefully, whispered, "Thank you," to the photograph, and joined Nadia in the kitchen. Tomorrow, Zaire Freeman, son of Martha, keeper of her legacy, musician in his own right, would walk into the academy as a student. Not a curiosity, not a feel-good story, not a victim or a hero, just an artist doing the work, the way it should have been all along. Tag someone who needs to hear this story. Justice delayed isn't justice denied when courage speaks.